Some of you might recognize the actor next to me, Mr. Paul Newman. You might know of him from his numerous films, his Academy Award, or his salad dressing. But what you might not know him for is his co-founding of the organization Wastewater Network, which provides the vital service of bringing safe drinking water to thousands of people in rural communities abroad. My name is Kelsie DeFrancia, and I'm pleased to be presenting Resource Management for Small Water Systems on behalf of my workshop group, our faculty advisor, Shadan Azali, and our client, Wastewater Network. There are thousands of development projects worldwide specifically aimed at improving drinking water resources. But what is surprising and troubling is that in the hardest hit areas, up to 80% of all such projects fail. This means that there's a high likelihood that instead of providing clean, safe drinking water, a project is actually going to end up defunct and in some cases do more harm than good. So in what ways can involved organizations increase these odds for success? That is the core question that underlies Wastewater Network's current efforts and has motivated our work this semester. So I'll introduce you to our client, an organization with a fairly successful track record thus far. I'll then go into our research and work this semester, which will lead to our findings and recommendations that will hopefully help Wastewater Network increase their long-term odds of success. Wastewater Network's mission is to bring together public and private stakeholders to create water solutions that are socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable. They currently serve about 250,000 people in developing countries, engaging community leaders, health workers, and volunteers to create solutions that are self-sustaining. In India and Ghana, Wastewater Network establishes water treatment stations, targeting rural communities of less than 5,000 people and treating water contaminants such as chloride and fluoride. Wastewater Network's economic model ensures that these water treatment stations will be maintained in the long run, but as they develop new stations, they realize the importance of placing increased priority on the sound management of environmental resources. So with this new goal in mind, we were tasked with researching how to best incorporate environmental criteria into their site selection process of building a new water treatment station. So our team focused on planning for water safety and security, mitigating groundwater depletion, finding better options for wastewater disposal, and developing a spatial tool to help us analyze and visualize our findings. So I'll now take you through our findings and recommendations for each of these research areas. And explain how Wastewater Network can further incorporate environmental criteria into the siting phase of building a new water treatment station in India. So first, one of the ways to ensure potable drinking water is to identify and plan for water supply stressors. And so our team recommends starting by creating a water safety plan. Based on case studies our team completed of similar organizations, a water safety plan should aim to provide strategies for budgeting water, protecting water sources, identifying potential security issues, and reducing water stressors. We found several frameworks that have been developed within the past decade, and based on these frameworks, we've identified these steps. First is to assemble a team consisting of local government, water engineers, and subject matter experts. Second is to map the community water system. Next is to identify sources of contamination and possible threats to water quality and quantity. And finally is to prepare and operationalize the plan. Our team found that groundwater depletion is a major issue, specifically in India. So addressing this will be a large part of the water safety plan. After an extensive literature review, we've determined that it's necessary to collect data on future forecasts of population, demographic changes, and water consumption rates in order to quantify water demand and successfully manage groundwater. Based on the resources we've collected, we recommend that Wastewater Network establish sustainable withdrawal amounts and make projections on future economic development to ensure that groundwater can accommodate any projected increase in demand. In Safe Water Network's current operations, the treatment of contaminated water produces one stream of pure drinkable water and another stream that is highly concentrated with pollutants. And currently, this polluted wastewater ends up in the local town drain or surface water bodies. So the goal of our research was to both ensure that the waste streams comply with India's national standards and also identify a better disposal option for this wastewater. After conducting a thorough literature review, we found that while the majority of information is aimed at larger sized projects, there are examples of good management that Safe Water Network can apply to its smaller sized systems. So based on our research, the two main ways of proper wastewater management are to either increase system efficiency to create less waste flow, or to find alternative uses or disposal methods, such as using the wastewater for laundry businesses or wood treatment businesses. So building primarily off of the second option, our recommendations are to incorporate the management of wastewater into the site selection process, which first involves assessing the potential businesses in a community that could use it. We also recommend the development of a system to determine the best alternative use at a given site and performing additional and continued monitoring of the quality of the wastewater. So one way to draw all of these recommendations together is through the use of Geographic Information Systems, or GIS. If you're not familiar with it, GIS has the ability to combine various types of data and analyze them based on location. Andhra Pradesh is a state of India, highlighted on the map here, and is an area where Safe Water Network already operates and is looking to expand. So for this state, we gathered data on population, land use, groundwater availability, and levels of contaminants in groundwater, such as fluoride and chloride. Using GIS, we can combine various criteria from each of these data sets to recommend the most ideal sites for development of new water treatment stations in this state. So as an example, we worked off some of the recommendations from our team and criteria from Safe Water Network to do an analysis of fluoride levels, groundwater availability, and population in Andhra Pradesh. First, identifying the areas with the highest amount of fluoride contamination and therefore the most in need of water treatment. Next, the areas with the highest amount of groundwater available. And finally, areas with a population density of about 4,000 people in a 2-kilometer radius of a village, which is a target from Safe Water Network. That means it is both a rural area, but also has a high enough population to maintain the station. So assigning various levels of importance to each of these data sets, and we've come up with the areas most suitable and most in need of water treatment in Andhra Pradesh, which are shown in green on the map here. The red points are areas that Safe Water Network already has water treatment stations, and so as you can see, they are already operating in areas we've identified that are fairly desirable for treatment. But you can also see that the most desirable site we identified is in the district of Prakasam. And so as Safe Water Network expands its operations, this is an area that they should consider. Ultimately, the sound management of environmental resources will ensure that Safe Water Network can continue providing safe, clean drinking water to rural communities. We hope that by utilizing our recommendations, Safe Water Network can continue to develop their projects in a responsible, sustainable manner, and that they will further increase their odds of long-term success. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Kelsie, congratulations, nice presentation.
Thank you.
I also liked your use of GIS for some of the siting recommendations. I'm curious if you explored or were exposed to any of the climate events, the monsoon flows, the watersheds, and that kind of information as part of your research for the siting.
Yeah, so what we found in terms of data sets for GIS is, especially in developing countries, it's really hard to find this data unless we're actually going out there and collecting the data ourselves. So again, we found data sets on population, different types of contaminants, specifically for climate change and monsoons. We found annual rainfall, but not something so specific as you're describing. And so it's really going to depend on what data is available that they can utilize this tool to come up with different criteria for their new sites. Thank you for the question. Sarah?
Yes, lovely presentation.
Thank you.
And I was interested in your suggestion. It's a great suggestion to establish a sustainable withdrawal amount. And I wondered whether you went down that path a little bit further and suggested tools by which they could do that, or whether that was too fine-grained a recommendation. So I was wondering whether you might want rationing of water or payment for water. I didn't know whether you had gotten into that, and I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm not sure that our group specifically got into it. I'm sure that some of our group members that worked on that would be happy to talk with you after. In terms of establishing sustainable withdrawal amounts, a lot of it, I think, will depend on what data they can collect while they're there. And so since we're here in New York City and they're in India, it's a little hard to figure out exactly what data they've already collected. But that is absolutely something that we recommend and that they'll hopefully move forward with in the future.
Great, thanks.
Time for one more question. I see one over there.
Great presentation. I noticed that there were also a few stations that were in the less desirable area, and I was wondering if you happen to have information about the different stations in the areas you identified as being desirable and less desirable. Like basically, is there information about the stations that's consistent with your weighted analysis?
So I do want to point out that this is kind of an example analysis. The criteria that we did our weighted analysis with was based on recommendations, but maybe it's not exactly what Safe Water Network will use as they use this tool. Right now, the development of their current stations is highly linked to how much a community wants to support this station and the economic side of maintaining a station. And so I think these less desirable areas, maybe our analysis showed that there wasn't as high a level of contaminants, but at the same time, that community maybe really wanted this safe water station, and it's probably really good for their economy. So that would probably be one of the reasons.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.